We're going to move now to session 3, standardization and governance. And maybe the quote of the day will be even more apropos that we're talking about going backwards on high heels. I want to introduce to you our two chair people. Dr. Frank Rockhold is currently the Senior Vice President, Global Clinical Safety and Pharmacovigilance at GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceutical Research and Development. And Lynn Hudson, Dr. Hudson serves as the Chief Science Officer for the Critical Path Institute and the Executive Director of the Multiple Sclerosis Consortium. I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Lynn and I are going to divide and conquer here today, so we've split up the session. I'm here not only as my role of Head of Safety and Pharmacovigilance, but I also am responsible for our internal data disclosure transparency policy. So I'm here not only just as a scientist, but I have a great interest in the transparency area. And also, in my spare time, I was past chair of the CDISC organization, which you'll hear a speaker from today. So I have a real interest in the promoting pragmatic use of standards. The balance of standards and governance is a delicate one. Too little or none prevents progress, prevents access to information. Too much stifles the process and creates a lag in access. So getting that balance right is important in any project like this. So the purpose of today's discussion is to outline some of the issues. And just as the discussion with data privacy, the idea here is to set up an atmosphere to enable the data sharing process, not to place hurdles in its path. So the first four of the speakers are going to talk about use of standards to facilitate data sharing. So we have speakers from FDA, from the nonprofit standards organization, and an individual from Merck. And I'll introduce them in turn. So they're going to sort of set up the session, facilitate standards. Lynn, in a moment, is going to pose some questions that we've come up with for you to think about as what are some of the issues in the background here around standards that you ought to think about as you're listening to the speakers. We're going to have two discussion sessions, one after the first four speakers, and then we'll have a more formal panel discussion after all of the speakers are done, and Lynn will facilitate the second half of the session. So before I introduce the first speakers, I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Thank you, Frank. It was exciting for me to hear the phrase liberating data at this morning's session, because I never took time in my youth to join a movement, but now I can feel part of a data liberation movement. So we asked each of our speakers to consider the following questions. When are data standards essential? What types of data analyses are enabled by standards? How do data standards affect data quality? To maximize data access and analysis of multiple clinical trials, should drug developers pool and standardize their clinical trial data, or should the FDA take the lead in providing a data mining resource for qualified investigators? Who owns and maintains the data? Who decides what an ethical and constructive use of the data looks like? Who pays to get the data in the standards format? The current data owners have paid for it once. Who pays to use it the second time? Is this data effort meant to be inclusive, invite anyone to donate data, or target certain areas and request it? And finally, how does the user know if the data being shared with them is representative of the universe of data on that topic?
So while you're pondering those questions, don't expect to get answers to all those today, but the first speaker is Ron Fitzmartin from FDA. Unfortunately, Marianne Slack had a family emergency, wasn't able to join us today. So Ron has agreed/volunteered, I'm not sure which, to step in for Marianne. And he's back in the back of the audience, so he's going to go through the talk that Marianne was going to give. So thank you very much to Ron for quickly coming up to speed on this topic. So